Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody, depending upon where you are in the world. And welcome to Afternoons with Aces, the cloud reporting series. As Heidi said, this is the seventh in our series. I have another one planned in the near future, and then we'll have a couple additional ones that will occur hopefully in the fall. So what we're going to cover today, we're going to cover the FRS basic trial balance. So we're going to give a brief recap. Initially, we're going to go through some of the sessions that we've already covered. And the reason I want to do that is because today's session, and actually the session we're going to do next, which is getting financial reports from the system, it's really key that you understand what we have done and what we've presented in prior sessions so that they work. We'll talk about going through the Financial Reporting Center and reviewing the trial balance by ledger currency or entered currency. Then we're going to review the design. How is that report specifically built? So Lee Briggs is going to do a review of the FRS Financial Reporting Studio tool and explain how Oracle goes about creating the actual report and how you would go about creating it manually if you needed to modify it. And then there's a bonus section, how you can create a validation of hierarchies within the financial reports. And Lee and I, we talked about this. I don't remember if it was on the last session or the one before that, but we really believe in that and think it's super important that your hierarchies are complete. And then if we have some time at the end, we will answer some questions. I do have a hard stop at 12 o'clock because I have to get on a steering committee call. So hopefully we will get done quickly. All right, so introductions. Lee, you want to take it away first?
Absolutely. And Tom, I'm really sorry that you're so important you have to be on that call. Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever we said for that. Everyone, my name's Lee Briggs. I head up the Cloud ERP team practice here at Creo, fully owned subsidiary of FRS. I've got my degree in accounting and finance from University of Leicester. That was in 2000. No, it wasn't. 1996. Masters in 97. Been working with Oracle applications. Started with EBS in 2001. Pretty much been EBS through 2012, 2013 when cloud became generally available. I started working with cloud and pretty much worked with cloud for the last 11 years. I got my ACEness in 2013. It's through present, so for the folks who don't know about this, and if you haven't seen it on social media or LinkedIn, it's been blasted everywhere, but whatever. You actually have to renew that ACEness. So we have afternoon with ACEs. Tom and I are both ACEs. You have to meet the criteria for ACEs every year. We have had our ACEness renewed, so we're still good there. But I got mine in 2013. Also, the OATUG Star Presenter of the Year in 2014, the first year that they gave out that award, which is kind of cool. But that's a little bit about me. Tom.
All right, thanks, Lee. So I'm Tom Simkiss, Commercial and SLED Practice Director for Creo. I've been here since 2017. Prior to that, I was with several other consulting companies. I've been doing Oracle, both as an end user and a consultant for a long time. I got my Bachelor of Arts from Economics and Administration from Versailles College in 95. And my Juris Doctorate from the James A. Beasley School of Law in 2002. I got my ACEness, as Lisa lovingly puts it, in 2014. I, too, got to keep it for another year. So, yay for me. I did not promote it on LinkedIn as some others have chosen to do. And I was also an OATUG Star Presenter of the Year in 2017. So that is enough about us. All right, so where have we been? The first session that we did was on chart of accounts design. So Lee and I reviewed really some of the best practices that he and I have followed in all of our years together. And they are kind of tenets that we instill on the folks that work directly for me here at Creo and that I've instilled in consulting really as long as I've been doing this. And then we talked about the next session was the hierarchies and how to create the standard income statement. And I bring that one up because the first things that we're going to show today are really based upon things that we did in that session. So if you were not fortunate enough or you did not have the ability to watch that session, you can certainly go back. It's on a YouTube channel. And we also have the links to these things. You should go back and watch it so that the things we're going to do today make a little bit more sense. Then we had 4 sessions on SmartView. Some were longer than others. The first one was about configuring connections, really just how you download the tool, how you get connected. And I'm always surprised at the number of clients that don't know how to use SmartView, and that's mostly because I'm really surprised by the number of consultants that don't know how to use SmartView and don't know how to use FRS. Interestingly enough, we do these sessions with the main goal of obviously educating end users, but I tend to see a lot of consultants on these because there's not a lot of guys that know this. Certainly not know it as well as Lee and I do. Session number 4 was going over the options in SmartView. That's just how to use the ribbon. We then created an ad hoc analysis, and the last one we did, and I really like this one a lot, was connecting to and reporting to from OTBI. So you can connect to SmartView, connect right to that OTBI analysis tool, and create reports using the SmartView plugin. The really nice thing is, and I do this quite a bit, you can create the analysis in OTBI, and then using your SmartView connection, you can open it. And that's really cool to do, whether you're doing it in Excel or you're doing it in Word or PowerPoint. Today, we're going to go over the standard trial balance, and that really is based upon that second session. The next session that we do will be how to create an income statement, actual, budget, and trend. And some of those income statements, they will come right from the system, the standard process. And then some of them, Lee's going to show you how to create them manually. So recap, generating financial reports and account groups. Assuming you set your hierarchy up the right way, there's a process out there, and brilliantly enough, it's called generate financial reports and account groups. I bring this up mostly because for a long time, especially in the EBS world, customers were always surprised that Oracle didn't come with a out-of-the-box financial statement. And my response to that was always, well, everyone's financial statements are different, and they are. Everyone's looks a little bit different, but it's base level. An income statement has to have a revenue account. It should have cost of goods sold, and it should have expenses, right? And so Oracle kind of took that, and they created this process a little while ago. I want to say about three or four releases ago. It's been out there for a good bit. But what it does is, depending upon your hierarchies and your account groups, you can create a set of reports, and all you have to do is fill these things in. So you fill in your chart accounts, you fill in your accounting calendar, your top revenue account, your top cost of sales, and your top operating expense account. And you run this, and not only does it create some account groups, which you can use from the account monitor, which is really nice, it also creates a set of standard reports. And what are these standard reports? Well,
hang on, sorry, not standard reports. They're standard financial reports.
Thank you.
Right, so they're not a scheduled process. These are financial reports, but they have been generated at least in a standard format that Oracle throws out there. So I just wanted to make that as a clarification.
Thank you for the correction.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. So you get the income statement. It's a relatively straightforward income statement. You get a consolidated income statement, a rolling quarterly and a rolling monthly income statement. I will say that Oracle does a decent job of creating them, but I'm not crazy how they do it. Lee and I have a slightly different way of creating our income statements. I tend to create my income statements, especially if it's a rolling one. I use a single column to do it. And there's a way you can do that using functions within the FRS tool. Lee's going to show you that in a couple sessions, but Oracle's is fine if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know how to create FRS reports, when a lot of folks don't. As I said, you can run this and you can get those reports, and they do a really nice job working. The other thing that it does is it creates the database connection. And again, a frustration for me, I go to clients that I didn't implement, and I see the database connection, and it's usually brilliantly named something like prod. And that's great when you're in prod, but when you clone that environment back, the database connection gets cloned as well. And it says prod. And, that's really kind of foolish. What Lee and I typically would do when we are not using this process, we would create the database connection and give it a name that was meaningful. So as you may or may not know, you can connect with FRS and SmartView to not just the general ledger balances cube. And we went through this on our last session. There's actually projects cubes. There's assets cubes now. There's cash management cubes. So we tend to give them a name that is meaningful. So for general ledger, I will typically give it a name of FIN or GL. And for project accounting, we would give it PA. So the nice thing with this is if you run this program, it gives it a consistent name so that when you run this in dev or you run it in test, you can run it again in production, and then you can use the standard process to migrate your FRS reports across environments. And that really is a nice thing so that you're not rebuilding those reports.
And that's a key part. So I think we saw in the first session, we talked about using the spreadsheet loader to create your chart of accounts, put your hierarchies in there. But you're establishing, if you're using that same spreadsheet loader in your dev build, your test build, if you've got it, your prod build, you're using that same file every time, you have got that consistency. And that's the key part. As soon as you start going from dev to test, test to prod, whatever, you start migrating reports through and through. If anything out there isn't consistent, the report in the target instance is going to start bombing. I don't have, that hierarchy name. I don't have that hierarchy version name. I don't have that connection, as Tom said. If you don't have that, you have to go and fix the thing anyway. So it's something we install on all our consultants, having that same consistency all the way through. So I'm copying and pasting when I'm setting up to do that kind of thing to make sure that a difference is a difference. It's not now I called it Matt last time and I'm calling it Matthew now, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Lee. And actually to that, and when Lee and I were just talking about this, we really are big fans. We weren't initially of using the rapid install loaders if you do configurations. There were some drawbacks to use them initially, but Oracle's kind of overcome those. So when you're doing your initial setup, if you use a spreadsheet loader and you get it right, you can reuse that spreadsheet loader across instances to migrate your setups, and it ensures consistency. There's also ways you can do setup migration. Oracle's got setup migration. There's other third-party products that do some do a better job than others. But the real message we're trying to hit on is consistency. You want to make sure you've got consistency across your configurations and across your environments. All right, so getting back to reports, let's look at the Financial Reporting Center. So how do you get to the Financial Reporting Center? Assume you've got the right roles and privileges. You will click on the beloved hamburger, which is the navigator on the upper left of your screen in Oracle Cloud. You can click on others and then click on Financial Reporting Center. If you're still using kind of the legacy look and feel, it's still under others. You don't necessarily have to click the hamburger. You can click the navigator in the upper left-hand side. You obviously can favorite this as well, and it will be up in your recents if you have navigated to it. So you click on Financial Reporting Center. From here, you can access reports. You can access some OTBI reports if they've been shared, but you can also access your financial reports. Now, I will say drawback's probably not the right word, but something that the tool does that I'm not crazy about, it actually prefixes the name of the reports with the month that you run it for, as well as the ledger. And I guess the reason it does that is because you could actually run this each month and generate a new set of reports. Because what it does is, and you'll see this, and Lee will kind of go this in a little bit deeper, it actually hard codes. Run it again in April of 23, you get another set of reports prefixed with the 0423. What Lee and I tend to do is we run the report the first time, make sure everything's right. We then actually go in and rename these reports, and then we modify them so that the period is not hard-coded. It's actually prompt, or we use something that's called a point of view, which again, Lee will show. But this is what they look like. You run the job the first time of the period, and there are all the reports that come out of the box. You can pick them, and we got this primary trial balance by ledger currency, and there we go. So it gives it a very nice name, brilliantly labeled. It's the same name as the report. This is a period to date one. So it's a very simple looking trial balance. There's Oracle standard trial balances are very nice. They've done a really good job with them. You can get them into Excel. You can get them into PowerPoint, Word. And those are standard ones. This is one that just comes out if you want an FRS trial balance. The nice thing with this is you can have this drillable, whereas some of the outer box ones are not. This one is a FRS report, so you can get it to Excel, you can get it to Word, you can get it to PowerPoint, all those great things. What you have there at the top in that gray area, that is called your point of view. And you can click on any of those that have a line and you can change it, right? So the benefit of having things in that point of view, if I wanted to select a different accounting period, I could select 0323 and then I would change it. Now, bear in mind, the way the report is defined, that 0323 is hard-coded. So anytime you were to run this report, if you don't change it in the report definition, it will always default to 0323.
The other thing to note, the one thing on that screen, as you're looking at it, that we want to call out is it is, so Tom said anything with an underline on you cannot change. This report that Tom was looking at there was a trial balance by ledger currency. So you'll notice even on the screenshot we have there, the currency total you could not change because this report is the ledger currency. It is the currency type, and that was something we looked at in Smart View, one of the dimensions. That one has deliberately been locked down because there's a different trial balance report. The out-of-the-box process we ran to run these reports generates a trial balance by entity currency. We're going to come on that in a couple of slides. You'll see it's going to look very similar. The report will look the same, but that one will be
transaction in this ledger, you're certainly able to do that as long as you got your rates defined. It will automatically convert that for you to US dollars. That's standard functionality. So this includes entered and converted currency.
Yeah.
So again, what we have is the way this report is defined at the page level. You get the option to choose different legal entities, and this is similar, I would say, to content set or page levels if you're used to EBS. What this allows you to do is to get a separate report for each legal entity. So you can click on, legal entity 311 here or 101, and it will show you just the activity for that individual entity that you select. All right, notice this is the trial balance by entered currency. All right, so all values are the same. We're looking at all companies. I'm just going to scroll back up real quick, and if you notice, my numbers are the same here, but they're not the same for every account. There's a couple transactions here that were entered in different currencies, right? So just note, and as you would expect, your beginning balance in USD, your ending balance shouldn't change. It's only going to be your period activity that's going to have different entered currencies. All right, but again, this report, you don't have to do anything. We set the ledger up the right way. We set the hierarchies up the right way.
Yeah.
We ran this process.
Let's say in this particular case, it's a trial
Hierarchies
balance,
didn't
so
matter.
we're not using a trial. The important thing here, and we're going to cover this when we do the income statement in the next session. This one does not use hierarchies. In fact, if Tom goes to the next slide, we kind of give you kind of an idea of what the instance does kind of look like, or what the report looks like. I'm sorry.
And we're there actually.
There we go.
All right. So what we have here is we opened up the financial reporting studio. And what I want to kind of point out with this is I think up until 3 years ago, was it?
Yep.
This was a client-only tool. EPM got the web version a little bit as they typically do before ERP did, most because it's an EPM-based tool, although I will take my daily swipe in my EPM brethren. The amount of guys that do EPM that don't know how to use this tool constantly staggers me. But at any rate, so we opened the report. This report is shared under the share folder.
You lost the front.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
So our internet went down. Sorry about that. I'm not sure where we got disconnected. Heidi, are you able to let me know where we got disconnected?
It was not on my end because you were hosting, Tom.
I know Heidi was on my end. What was the last thing you heard me say?
Oh. It was this slide right here.
All right.
You're
So,
talking about your EPM brethren.
Okay, yeah. So they said the number of EPM brethren that don't know how to use this tool, whatever. So what we have here is we have the report name is entered into the text area at the top. We've got member name, that is a dimension, so we can bring in the dimension names and make the kind of the title of the report somewhat dynamic, which I think is a really cool thing. As you can see, the accounting period in the middle of the screen, that is what's called the grid, and Lee will delve into that a little bit more. But that grid, that accounting period is hard coded, right? So it's hard coded to 03. If we wanted to change that, we could do that. We have the point of view is set at the user level, and essentially what that just means is that the user will dictate what they can see. So this can be changed. One user could run this report and they could change the ledger to a different ledger if they have access to it. So it does a really nice job. You've got your current point of view for currency. You've got your balance amount, and that's beginning balancing. And those are all just different items that are shown in the report. If you look, By default, we are not using hierarchies, and Lee kind of highlighted that when we spoke. So we use the value called all company values. And the way it does it gets all the company values. So that's one value that we're picking, which means I'll show total. And then we get the descendants. The descendants just means it's going to get the lowest level. And that's what gives us the ability to select when we're running the report, or when we're viewing the report, we can select all companies, so it's consolidated. And then you can select the individual members. And the benefits of descendants of all company values, rather than putting the individual members over in a dropdown, is that as you add new companies, they are dynamically added to the report. If you were to use the tool and select, a subset of companies, I mean, that's certainly valuable if you don't want to have every company value in it. But the problem with that is then you're doing maintenance on reporting, and something that Lee and I always like to say. When you put Oracle Cloud in, or even EPM, you will always either have account maintenance or hierarchy maintenance, or you'll have report maintenance. If you do your job right as a consultant, you have one or the other. If you do your job poorly, you have both. So Lee and I are big advocates of using, hierarchies or descendants or prompts so that it can be very dynamic. And then, using hierarchies and limited hierarchies where it's appropriate. All right, so now we're going to replicate the trial balance by ledger manually. Lee is going to go through and talk about how to do this.
Absolutely. So thank you, Tom. Actually, whoa, so as you saw, we lost our internet here, so I'm not on camera. I will come back on camera. So I am replicating that report, not the way I would design it. I am replicating it just so you've seen the same approach out there. So as Tom saw, as Tom showed, we showed how to get into financial reporting center. So I've gone to the navigator in the top left. I've gone to others, financial reporting center, and that will open up a new window. In that new window, you're going to go to Tools, Launch Financial Reporting Web Studio. As Tom said, this is now delivered on the web. It used to be a install. It used to be the most dated client-side tool you ever saw. If you're as old as Tom and I and have as much gray hair as Tom has and I have in my beard, it would look like Windows 3.1 kind of thing. I think you had a choice of like 8 colors or something like that. Anyway, the web version is a whole lot smoother. If we can go to the next slide, Tom. Okay, so once we've got into the tool, you get a new window. I've gone to File, New, and then on the right-hand side of that, we go to Report. So this is where we are creating a report. I haven't saved it anywhere yet. I'm literally creating a new report. We can go to the next one, please.
Yep.
So a report will show as it does in the middle of the screen here, and it shows you essentially what the piece of paper you're going to build this report on is going to look like. So the grid that we see we have out there is initially it's in portrait mode, so it's going up and down. If you want it on sideways mode, you want a longer one, you can design that, and it really helps you to get this report looking really good if you're going to print it. Obviously, you can consume this in HTML, PDF. You can consume it in Excel, whatever it is, but the tool is really there for the pixel perfect stuff. And as you start creating the report, there are 3 areas of that report. There is a header, a footer, and a body. Anyone's got any experience with Microsoft Word, you know what a header is, you know what a footer is. Header is the area at the top of the screen. As we're looking at that grid right now, you can kind of see a green line, kind of like half a box down in the beginning area. That's my header, so I can put there the title of the report. We're going to do that in a little while. You can do stuff in the footer of the report. I don't generally use footers, but you've got that functionality as well, and it's the same concept. You can make the footer as tall or short as you want. And the main area is the body. So we're going to go to the body. I'm not worried about the header right now. We'll come back to the header either later on in today's session or in the next session out there. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to go to the body. I'm going to hit my plus sign to add something to the body, and I have some options out there. So I can create a grid that would essentially be a report or a report layout. We'll come back to that later on. I can put a chart in here, so I can actually use FRS to start designing charts out there. I can put an image, so if I had in my header, I always wanted our company logo, I can put images out there, or I can just put text that's going to be on every page. So maybe in the footer, this is confidential, something like that. I could use that. But we've gone to grid. Now, as soon as we go to the grid, it looks for all the data sources we have out there. These are the database connections that Tom talked about earlier, having that consistency all the way through. And if you use the system out of the box, if you generate those run that scheduled process to generate those 7, I think it is, reports, those database connections, we're going to go there. They're all named after the chart of accounts. You know, in my particular case, in my demo instance, I'm going to go to the US chart of accounts and we're going to select that. As soon as I select that, I get a dimension layout for where I want stuff to go. So when we went through the Smart View sessions, we talked through dimensions out there. You'll have your chart of accounts. Each of your segments in your chart of accounts will be dimensions. You will have your ledger, your accounting period. You will have your scenario, whether it's actual balances, budget balances, forecast, whatever we call them, your balance amounts, you have your account, all that kind of stuff out there. And you're using this screen, this form here, to drag and drop where you're expecting stuff to go. So if I think of a trial balance, I think of all my accounts as individual rows out there. I would think my columns could be company. We actually talk, I think, later on in this about like a rolling trial balance. So you have maybe have companies going across. I've seen people say, no, periods going across there. We can do all that kind of stuff. You have the page breaks. Tom mentioned this on the report we looked at earlier, where you have all companies and then each company listed out. You just put that at a page level. So you can really control where all this stuff can go. We go to the next page, we're going to look at how that report was built. So the report that we were looking at, that trial balance, had company at the page level. You could, the system, if you're generating this to PDF, would have separate pages for each company, for all companies, and then separate pages for each company. We're going to have accounts as our rows, so it's going to list every account down there. And then the columns are going to be the balance amount. So whether it's period to date, year to date, it's going to have those amounts sitting out there. That's the basics of that report. We're going to go to the next page, and we're going to start getting our dimensions out there. So as I look at this, now this is really looking how the tool works. So if I see on the center of the page, I've got pages. I can see company is listed there. I can see in my grid, I've got my rows. Row 1 has account next to it. My columns has column A, has got my balance amount. The item you have in orange out there is all the other dimensions out there. Those are the dimensions we didn't use in a page, we didn't use in a column, we didn't use in a row. And currently they are sitting at the user point of view. So the user point of view means whatever the user was last looking at when they looked at a report, that's what's going to default on that report. I'm not a fan of using that user point of view, because you start getting some funky results if you don't notice you've changed something. So if I was looking at, say, an income statement for my cost center, and I had that at the user point of view, that was looking at my cost center. If I then switch to a balance sheet, which has got the cost center at that same level, it's going to say, I'm going to run a balance sheet, that's great, but I'm only using your cost center because that was the last thing you looked at. It's going to give really funky numbers out there. So a lot of this is by design. Where do you want this stuff to go? I typically say, if the report is designed to have that thing hard-coded, you can still change it, but have it hard-coded, you put it at the grid level. Every time you run that report, it's going to pick up that stuff again. Anything in the user point of view, it's going to say, if that's the last thing you looked at, I'll put it up there. So something like accounting period would be at the user point of view. If you're looking at January 23, when you look at one report, next report you look at probably is going to be for January 23. It's more likely than not to be able to do that. So you kind of start using that logic out there. Okay, let's start talking about the rows. We're going to go down to the row level. So at the row level, I'm going to double click on that account. And I now can start picking what I'm looking for. Now we saw as the report was built, it was looking for all accounts out there. So as I initially come in here, I see the members. My members are the values that exist out there. I can have account. You can see account has got a triangle next to it, so I could expand that out. It could have your current point of view for whatever dimension is account. So if you were looking at, again, you would use that for, if you were looking at 5643, the next one you look at, which uses the point of view for that dimension, would look at for 5643. Or you could have a prompt, literally a window opens up that says, what account do you want to use it for? I don't want any of those. I want to use I want to get all accounts. I know that I want to get all my accounts out there. What I'm actually going to do is if I go to the next slide, rather than looking at members, I'm going to look at functions. Functions allow me to do all kinds of stuff. I can look for children. I can look for descendants. So children is literally whatever value I'm going to look for is going to have be a parent. It would then list out all the children that roll up that parent. I can look for descendants. Descendants would say you're picking, and again, if I try to use the family idea, descendants would say, let me look for a grandparent. It would show all the parents that roll up to that grandparent, plus all the children that roll up to those parents. So you have that kind of idea. Siblings can look across your hierarchy. So if I can pick one parent, it's going to pick every other parent that sits at the level. There's a whole bunch of those, and we'll look at those in a later session. But that's an idea of functions. I'm going to pick children, and then it's going to say, what children are you looking for? In my particular case, I'm looking for children of all account values. All account values is a hierarchy that Oracle builds for every segment out there. Literally, you add a value, it's getting added to all account values. One of the things that we stressed in one of the earlier sessions was you want these hierarchies out there, but you have to maintain them. So as I look at accounts here, in this chart of accounts, I have 3 hierarchies. I had all corporate accounts V1, all corporate accounts V1B, all corporate accounts V6B. Again, I'm guessing they're different versions that we have out there, but every time you added a new account, you have to remember, let me go into V1 and add it in V1, V1B, put it in V1B, and so on and so forth. All account values, Oracle takes care of that maintenance. You add an account, it's in there already. And that's one of the things we're going to be actually looking at in a little while when we start getting to these bonus items out there of what we're going to get out there. So I've selected children of all account values. What's that going to do? It's going to give me every child that rolls up that hierarchy. It's going to list every account. It is awesome out there. I could add additional functions if I wanted to, so bring additional math. We'll take a look at that in a little while with the company. But that's got my row set. Awesome. I'm now going to insert a second row. My second row is going to be, let me get a total. So all that children did was list all those amounts out there. I'm going to put math in there. And again, I like using this. I've seen some functionality where Oracle will say, show me all the children and give a subtotal in one row. It's all well and good, but if you start doing math on those rows, it says, let me get those children and the total. I've included that total twice, so you start double counting numbers. So something that I've done, something Tom's on every report. Let me get the children. Let me get the total. When I do math, I'm doing math on totals. I'm not doing math on the children out there. So I've selected row 2, rather than saying math, rather than saying grab account value. I could even just say grab all children, but Oracle's report says do a total, sum row 1. We'll talk about how to do this math in the next session, but that's what we're looking for there. Literally just add up everything in row 1. We go to the next page, Tom. We're going to look at how Oracle built the columns. So I think when you were saying, let me look at beginning balance, let me get period activity, let me get closing balance. In column A, I've gone into my balance amount. Again, I've double clicked, and so I'm seeing my members out there. I've expanded to balance amount, and I can see beginning balance and period activity and ending balance. I'm going to literally select all 3 of those and drag them across. If we look at the next slide we have out there, on the right-hand side of the page. One more, sorry, Tom. I might have missed a cue at some point. On the right-hand side of the page now, we're seeing beginning balance, period activity, and ending balance. On the report definition, that's 1 column. When I look at the activity, it's 3 columns. My report gets a whole lot simpler. I don't have to go through and say, let me go to this column, let me change the numbering format, let me do beginning balance, let me go to the next one, do period activity, all that kind of thing. I'm defining in 1 column. All my formatting, when I get onto that, will just carry across as it generates to grab all 3 values out there. And you can see right at the bottom of the page there, that screenshot, once we've saved all this stuff, is showing in section A. You can see it's kind of got blue writing on there. It shows beginning balance, but just above it, where it says beginning balance, it's showing this 1 column, but it's beginning balance and period activity and ending balance. Now, if I was doing math and had to do stuff with those, I would need them in separate columns. So if I wanted to kind of do a checksum out there, I would need to say, here's a column for my beginning balance, my period activity, my ending balance. Let me do math in between them to prove that kind of stuff. But that's what we're looking for out there, to try and keep it as simple as we can. If I'm not doing math on something, put it in 1 row if I can. 1 row, 1 column. Okay, we talked about rows, we put in all our children, put in math, we talked about our columns, beginning, period, activity, end. We didn't do anything with the page level yet. So I've literally gone to my page level. I can see it was company. I've clicked on company. And now we're going to go to the next page and say, what are we looking for? Well, we know that when we looked at the standard report, it had all company values first. Didn't break it out. It just said, this is a total of every company you've got out there. So I've expanded company. I've selected all company values, and I've moved it onto the right-hand side. However, we also wanted every child out there of those listed separately. I'm still in my same page area. So I've gone to functions. I've selected my descendants and descendants of all company values. So that is saying, let me get all the company values plus every one of those other things out there. It's just going to list all the children. Sorry, it's not going to list all the companies. Descendants is just going to say, these are all the values underneath there. Again, I'm doing it in one area. One page is showing all company values, descendants, but when it prints, it's going to do them separately. The remaining dimensions, again, the Oracle hard codes them when they build this report. Don't like this, but let's go through it. So I had a dimension for accounting period to replicate the one we were looking at. I picked January 23. My ledger, we knew, it was looking at the chart of accounts out there. So I think in the demo instance, I think there's 3 ledgers associated with that one. I picked my ledger. I'm looking at all lines of business, all cost centers, all product values, all intercompanies. They're all segments in my chart of accounts. I'm looking at actual. I'm looking at period to date values. That's what the other report was looking for. I'm looking for, in this case, USD, and it was the total trial balance, the total currency. That's what we're looking for there. So I've hard coded that. And now, as I look at the data on the next slide, exactly what Tom was looking at when we looked at the standard, the report that's generated out of the box of standard. I see numbers. I see all company values. I then see all my values underneath there. So I think when Tom was looking at, he was looking at France, I think, or Germany, maybe. You can see that they're all listed out there. That was replicating that trial balance. Why do we talk about this trial balance? One thing that I always look at is my hierarchies. We talked earlier, all children of accounts has all the children in there. Your hierarchies, you've got to maintain the hierarchies. But Tom's going to take you through how you would use FRS to validate those hierarchies.
Thank you, Lee. And by the way, we did something similar when we did this in SmartView. So this is, I'm getting it, Lee. Thank you. Somewhat of a rehash, but it is important that we kind of go through this. If I can start my camera, I'd be really happy.
It was there.
It was there.
And now it's off.
And there we go. All right. So a trial balance, as Lee said, should contain every possible segment value, right? That's the kind of definition. A trial balance, if it is right, the beginning balance, the ending balance should tie to 0. And obviously your debits and credits for your period to date activity should tie. That's kind of straightforward. So you can use a similar report to verify your hierarchies in all your values. So again, something Lee and I really are believers of. You can have multiple hierarchies for different reasons. So you can have a hierarchy for financial reporting. You can have a hierarchy for allocations. You have a hierarchy for eliminations. And you might need a hierarchy that contains 10 values, and you could have 100 values in the value set. And you may be tempted to not include those other 90. I firmly believe that is a mistake. And the reason I believe that is because it's very easy to leave things off of a hierarchy if you've got the proper parent. So in that example I just used, if you need only those 10 values, you put them in a parent, and you can have subparents and really anything you need. And you can put the other 90 in a value that's called do not use. But why do I think that's important? Well, if you're using it as hierarchies for reporting or allocations, it's not easy to ensure that they are complete unless you are including all the values. So what we do is in addition to the all values and all the hierarchies, we include them. And then when you create a very basic report that includes all the values, if it foots to 0, you know that you've got your values in all of your hierarchies. If it doesn't, it means you are missing a value in your hierarchy. And kind of, how you go through is you have to look at each hierarchy and determine which one is flawed, but at least you know that you've got one that is flawed. So, what do we do for that? We use the all companies. So I'm selecting a hierarchy here, right? So I'm selecting an individual hierarchy. In this particular one, there's a V2 of the company hierarchy in the demo instance. Okay. And we can see that it doesn't tie to 0, right? The total's wrong. So we know that, and again, that could be intentional. However, they did this, that company hierarchy does not include all the companies, right? So if I were to flip this from hierarchy to all values, you could see that it'll flip to 0, and that will at least give you a listing of what is out there. And you can compare that against the values that are in this hierarchy and see which ones are missing. Okay. So this option, we have it for products. You can do this in FRS. You can do it in SmartView. Lee and I typically do this in SmartView only because I'm not too worried about the formatting. But why is it good to do in FRS? Well, you create the report, you can save it. You can save it as a report book. You can save it as a snapshot. A snapshot is exactly what it sounds like. It will hold the data and save it as it was today. Why is that important? If you use a current hierarchy, and Lee will talk about this in greater detail in a future session, but when we create hierarchies, and if you use the standard rapid install tool, 2 hierarchies are created for you at the initial start of the project. You'll get one called current and one called base. Base is exactly what it sounds like. It's in the initial hierarchy. I like to say this was the hierarchy that was in place as of the start of the project. When Lee and I build reports, we always use the hierarchy that's called current. So if I have a hierarchy for reporting, I'll call it, reporting hierarchy _ current. If I change that hierarchy for whatever reason, I will copy it, okay? And I will rename it old or, version 2023 or 2024, whatever it is. And I don't make a change to that hierarchy. That's my historical hierarchy. So what that means is, if I would want to go back in time and see how things were, I could update my report or pick that hierarchy. When you change your hierarchies and you change the current hierarchy, you move your values around, you add new values wherever it happens to be. And then because you use the current hierarchy in your report, again, it's automatically up to date. Remember what I said a few minutes ago. You're always either going to be maintaining your hierarchies or your reports. If you do your job well, you're only maintaining one. If you do your job poorly, you're maintaining both. So what a snapshot does is it gives you the ability to pull up a report as of a point in time and to see exactly how it was. So if you had to go back in time and book adjusting entries, or you did change your hierarchy and you don't want to change it in the report to a different version, you can always pull up a snapshot. And that's kind of the value of a snapshot. But you can use those things in conjunction with the reports to make sure that your hierarchies are complete.
Yep.
So just something you want to consider.
The slight change I have in that is if it's significant differences in the hierarchy, right? So if you add a new account for stationery, I probably wouldn't create a new version for that. I'd update current. Because if I'm creating it today, it's not like I've gone back in time and doing stuff. If I've had, the example I always use is reorgs of locations. If you have location in your chart of accounts and you do a reorg, yeah, that's just a new, version of the hierarchy, or a new hierarchy, depending upon what it is. That just is. But adding stationery, yeah, great new hierarchy.
Good clarification, Lee. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think that is it. So this was about 45 minutes. We did have a little power outage. Are there questions? This is usually the last couple of ones we've done. We've had questions throughout the session. So either we've done a really good job explaining it, or nobody is paying attention.
So I have to say, I've been looking at the chat all the way through. I don't see anything in the chat. I mean, you can listen to our dulcet tones for a couple of minutes. If anyone's got any questions on what we just built, if you want to put them in that chat window, we will get to them. As we said earlier, we deliberately broke this into a few sessions. First, just getting into the system. Let's look at a hierarchy. Let's talk about that chart of account stuff. What would you do with it? The next few sessions were around SmartView. So it's still just looking at the hierarchies, how you're looking to consume that data. In SmartView, it was let's get connected to SmartView, let's get the toolbar working, let's go and pull some data and start doing analysis type stuff out of the GL or out of OTBI in that last session. Now we're really getting into FRS. So what do those reports that we talked about in session 1 look like? We've got an idea for what it is. How did Oracle build it? How are we building the same thing? And making sure that your hierarchies are out there. Again, it's a whole bunch of stuff, but that's what we're looking at there. As at now, I don't see any questions.
Okay. So last thing I'll lead with, and then we will end this, would be Lee hit this pretty clearly in his section where he was showing you the beginning balance and the period balance and the ending balance all in a single column. And you have all of the account values in a single row. As you get more complicated reports, you will need more lines, obviously. But a belief that we have is you want as few lines as possible. You really want to use the functions. And the reason for that is you want to keep your formatting relatively consistent and relatively clean. You can do formatting at the row level, at the column level. You can actually do formatting at the individual cell level. And there are certainly good use cases for that. But the more formatting you have, as things change, the more complicated those reports can be to maintain. And we will hit that pretty hard when we get into the income statement session.
Yeah, as I said, today's session was just looking at how did they build the trial balance. That's how they built the trial balance. That's the look and feel there. Some says, that formatting is the heavy one to hit. Do you want dollar signs out there? What does a negative number look like? Is it parentheses? Is it minus? What do you do about signs? That's a critical one. We've actually been playing around on the report in SmartView for, we know that a credit shows as a negative number. In a financial report, I don't want to see negative numbers. They are generally bad unless it's like a contra account. You want to show it as a negative, but revenue should be a positive number on a report. We'll touch on that in the income statement. But in SmartView, we actually do the same thing. One of the things that Tom and I have always said is keep the balances the way they were. Credit is a negative number, but we can use SmartView to actually show it as a positive number, that kind of stuff.
So we got one question, Lee, and the question is from Christina Zimmerman. And if there is a shared report out there and I want to copy it and add my own personal folder, can I do that here? The answer is yes. You can obviously do it one of two ways. You can go into the BI catalog and copy it from there, or you can just open it using the Financial Reporting Studio tool and then do a file save as and save it to your folder. That is what I typically do when I'm building initial financial reports.
Yeah.
Great question, Christina.
So yes, as Tom said, absolutely the way. If you're doing it from instance to instance, you would typically follow the second approach. So you go to, I can't know if it's OTBI or if it's XML Publisher, but you can archive it there, bring it into the instance and do it. Oracle doesn't suggest that one, by the way. Oracle does have a mechanism when you're migrating stuff to actually say, oh, just pick up anything in the custom folder and save it down and move it up. But oftentimes, once you've been live for a while, there's so much, stuff that you don't want in tests going up prod. You still have that ability to archive those stuff. But yeah, that's Chris. I think that answered Christine's question.
All right. So going once, going twice, seeing no more questions. Thank you for those that attended. We appreciate it. Just as a point of information, some of us from Creel will be heading down to the government GFOA conference in Orlando on Sunday. Hopefully I will see some of you folks there. And then some of our troop will be heading out to the Oracle Applications and Technology User Group Conference next week, which is in Las Vegas. So if you are going to either of those events, please do seek us out. We will be there. We are hosting a happy hour at both locations. We're hosting one at Topgolf in Orlando with Oracle on Monday night of this coming week. And we're hosting one in Caesar's Palace next Monday night. And I do hope to see some of you guys there. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Afternoon with Aces.